Today is Monday, April 13th, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. The school Bible reading proposal moves forward. Well, that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can also email us your thoughts, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Happy to hear from you. We're glad you're choosing to spend some time with us each and every weekday, bright and early, as we do here on the Quick Start Podcast. A lot to get to, as always, on the focus story. Christianity's ancient roots are fading in Iraq, but a small, determined remnant is fighting to keep faith alive in the region. CBN's George Thomas is there and has that report. Also, on the main thing, one major women's policy group is pushing back on the culture by declaring April Faith Month. CBN's Madison Seals has the details on that coming up on the main thing. Want to tell you about our sponsor for this podcast today, Christian Solidarity International. And there is Christian persecution happening around the globe, as we've talked about here. You know it. You see it on CBN News, but you don't see it in the mainstream media. Why is that? Very reluctant to cover it, if at all. Maybe you get a token story here and there to sort of show that they covered it, but you really just don't see much emphasis placed on the plight of Christians around the world. And that is a shame, because then by default, you don't see the work people are doing to help. And Christian Solidarity is one of the organizations that is out there doing incredible work on the ground, advocating for persecuted Christians, providing real, tangible aid. They're making sure those stories don't disappear. And if you want to help shine a light where the world isn't looking, learn more at csi-usa.org/quickstart. That's csi-usa.org/quickstart. And you can help be a part of being the hands and feet of Jesus for Christians who are in the most vulnerable positions here, persecuted violently for their faith in Jesus. csi-usa.org/quickstart. We're going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And the U.S. military launching a maritime blockade targeting all ships entering or leaving Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. After peace talks collapsed over the weekend, the move is a major escalation aimed at cutting off a key revenue stream for Iran, especially as Tehran had been charging steep tolls to ships passing through the strait. Iran is warning of serious consequences, with its Revolutionary Guard saying no port in the region will be safe if its own access is threatened. Global markets are reacting. Oil prices have surged past $100 a barrel again, raising concerns about higher gas prices and broader economic fallout. Meanwhile, the fragile 2-week ceasefire is being tested. President Trump says it's still holding, but tensions are clearly rising as both sides dig in. And Texas is one step closer to making Bible passages mandatory reading in public schools, with the state board giving preliminary approval to a new curriculum list. The proposal passed overwhelmingly in a 9-1 vote that would apply about 5.4 million students statewide, starting in 2030, if finalized this summer. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And as Madison talked about last week on this podcast, that reading list includes well-known biblical passages that would be spread across grade levels, like the Golden Rule in kindergarten, Psalm 23 in middle school, and selections from the book of Job in high school. Officials say the Bible is being treated as a foundational literary text alongside classics like the Odyssey, Fahrenheit 451, and Dr. Seuss, which makes absolute sense, as we talked about on the podcast. If you look at the impact, obviously, that Scripture has had on not only specifically on America, but obviously the world. But why not? Why not do this? It makes absolute sense. You're not, quote unquote, establishing a religion by doing the obvious, which is studying the Bible, which is the most influential book of all time. So we'll keep you posted on any updates with that going forward. And we're going to go to the focus story now. And CBN's George Thomas was in northern Iraq, and it's one of the oldest Christian communities in the entire world. And it's really fading. And sadly, it's given all the violence and the stuff that has happened there, they're reducing in numbers. And yet, against all odds, some believers are returning, holding on to hope that their faith can endure in the very land that it began. George Thomas has that report for today's focus story.
In Erbil, just beyond the ancient citadel, lies a neighborhood unlike any other. This is Ankawa, a Christian enclave that has endured for nearly 2,000 years. Here, people still speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus.
This is a place of evangelization. This is a place where Christianity came right in the first century.
The Assyrian Church of the East, the Chaldean Catholic Church, and the Syriac Orthodox Church all trace their roots to this land, making Iraq home to some of the oldest Christian communities on earth. Today, however, that ancient presence is fading. The Christian population here has been shrinking for decades.
Every time there is a crisis, there is a war, there is a violence, there is a persecution, these old wounds start bleeding again.
What you're looking at there is the world's oldest Syriac Orthodox monastery, located here high up in the mountains of northern Iraq, overlooking the famous Nineveh Plains. You know, back in 2003, when the United States invaded this country, there were roughly about 1.5 million Iraqi Christians. Well, today that number has dropped dramatically to less than 130,000.
Yeah, it's a frightening situation.
The symbol of a fish.
Ano Jauhar Abdoko is the only Christian member of the Kurdish government's cabinet. He says wave after wave of violence has pushed Christians out of their homes. It began after the 2003 invasion. Then came the rise of ISIS, which forced more than 100,000 Christians to flee.
111 of our churches were attacked. 1,382 Christians were killed on identity only in 2 years. So our people were targeted because we are Christians.
The ones who decide to move here.
Among those who left decades ago and made the decision to come back is Dylan Adamat.
I used to come here as a child for holidays, just, for a few weeks. And going back to France was always a bit frustrating because I was missing here. There was something missing in my life, which was my Iraqi side after growing up in France.
For Adamat, this neighborhood isn't just where he's from, it's part of who he is.
This is my uncle's house. There, it's my cousin's house. This is my aunt's house there.
Each street holds a memory, each home a connection.
So this used to be the old consulate?
Yes, and it happens to be my cousin's house. So in the early 2000s, I know you'll say everybody's my cousin.
Born in Ankawa and raised in France, he spent years returning here as a child, never feeling at home anywhere else. For Adamat, this is more than geography. As an Aramaic-speaking Chaldean Christian, he sees Iraq as the cradle of his faith, language, and history.
We belong to this place and we need to come back. We need to be here to sustain, to thrive, to keep our culture, language, civilization, religion alive.
Now that heritage is at risk. After decades of violence and displacement, he fears it could disappear altogether.
Because we're at a very sensitive moment of history, we may disappear completely in a couple of generations. So if we don't do anything now about this, it will be too late in a few years.
In 2019, he left a successful law career in France and returned to Ankawa to start the return. a nonprofit helping Iraqi Christians come back to their ancestral home.
I wanted to normalize the idea of returning here, especially for our community. You know, we left for legitimate reasons. People were traumatized by wars and crises, but at a point, I realized that most of these people had this dream of coming back.
It's not an easy mission. Iraq remains unstable, and new regional tensions once again have families questioning if it's safe to return.
One of the key elements of our Christian faith is the hope, and I've noticed people had lost hope here. So my mission was this, to bring back this hope amongst our community, and this is deeply rooted in our Christian faith.
Still, since 2023, his organization has helped hundreds begin that journey home. Minister Abdoko sees signs of hope, especially here in Iraq's Kurdistan region.
In Enkawa, which is called the Vatican of Iraq or the Vatican of the East, we had only 2 churches. Now in Enkawa, 2003, only 2 churches. Now in Enkawa, we have more than 30 plus churches.
We are here to celebrate our faith, our brotherhood, our coexistence.
Last year, the region hosted its first Kurdistan National Prayer Breakfast, bringing together people of different faiths, a rare moment of unity in a divided region.
In Kurdistan, we are saying to all the Middle East that peace is possible, and diversity, religious and ethnic diversity, is not a threat.
Pastor Malaf Beythoun has seen that hope firsthand.
Kurdistan has become kind of like a safer place for many people over many years.
He started his church in 2012 with just 2 families. It's now one of Iraq's largest evangelical churches.
Here we have kind of like a freedom to work, to be officially recognized, to expand, to build, and even to reach out to the people, to have open service, to have whoever wants to come and visit the church. And always, the government here will support the churches.
Still, those here know the future will not be easy.
It will never be completely at peace, but at the same time, it will never be dead.
George Thomas, CBN News, Ankawa, northern Iraq.
Thanks for that report, George. Absolutely incredible stuff. And as someone who had the pleasure of actually being able to go to that area in northern Iraq, into Iraqi Kurdistan, it is a phenomenal place. And we definitely need to be praying for the Christians there because they're doing it right in the Middle East where a lot of people are not. It is absolutely true that it feels like a safe place there, even though it's obviously in the midst of a very dangerous region and it's tenuous there. But you get the sense of being welcome there, and it's vastly different than anything you would see on the news about what you expect from the Middle East. So definitely be praying for Christians there in that region and that they can return there safely if they so choose, and that they are not vanquished from that region. All right, we are going to go to the main thing now. And Concerned Women for America CEO and President Penny Nance joined Madison to explain why Christians shouldn't keep their faith private and why boldly living it out every day matters now more than ever. That conversation is today's main thing.
This month marks a special time for Concerned Women for America and fellow Christians. Penny, can you talk about what Faith Month is and where it came from?
I would love to say that the idea of Faith Month came to me when I was deeply in prayer and I was having my daily devotion. The truth is, I was on my Peloton bike and I got offered the umpteenth Pride ride for the month of June. And maybe it wasn't even the month of June because it seems like now it's no longer Pride Month, it's Pride Year. And there's always some sort of LGBTQ event or a moment that's being celebrated and talked about. And I started to question myself of, why did that irritate me? Why is that a problem for me? And the truth is, the bigger question is, why are Christians not as evangelistic for our beliefs as the LGBTQ community is for their beliefs? Instead of being upset or annoyed, why aren't we doing the same? And so Concerned Women for America, this has been about 3 or 4 years ago, said, you know what? April should be Faith Month. And by the way, there's this great Christian flag that's been around for, I don't know, half of a century. I think it was the Methodists that initially came up with it. And it's this beautiful Christian flag with a white background, a blue square with a red cross. Why don't Christians fly that in front of their homes or on their desks or in their lapels? Why aren't we going into the workplace talking about faith? And if your office has, all sorts of Pride Month activities or, encourages people to have something on their desk, then ask to have your Christian flag flown. Because it's, also there's a lot of people who are not necessarily, there are a lot of people in your company that aren't LGBTQ. There's a lot of people in your company that aren't Christian. So if we're going to have all sorts of things that are outside the American flag, let's talk about all of it, and let's let people represent what they believe. And then the other point is, especially when we're talking about having it in front of your home, it's a great opportunity to talk about your faith with your neighbors. It brings things up, and you can invite them to maybe your Easter church or to a meal at your home. But just being prepared, as it says in 1 Peter 3:15, to be prepared to make a defense of what you believe. And instead of Christians being annoyed, we should be as forthcoming and evangelical about our beliefs as the LGBTQ community is.
And that's such a great point to be introspective about, because I think it is easy for us to reserve sharing our faith on special holidays like Easter or Christmas. That's when we invite people to church or to dinner. Instead of, like you're saying, being forthcoming with our faith all the time, wearing it on our sleeve. Something else that I want to talk about is that this is a special year because the U.S. is celebrating 250 years of American history that is deeply rooted in Judeo-Christian principles. Why is it important for Christians to understand what we believe and apply it to the cultural moment that we're living in?
Well, I think it's important to understand basic history, right? I mean, yes, we are a more secular nation, but our foundation was based on religious freedom. And you had a whole group of people coming from around the world that were being persecuted for their faith. And this was a place where they could come and not have to be afraid. And so that principle still remains. And people have a lot of conversations about the separation of church and state. And that came from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptists to assure the Baptists that we weren't going to be an Anglican country, basically. And that, yes, that you can make that decision, but you also don't have to be afraid to be a person of faith and share your faith in our country. And so I think, and you talk about the founding fathers who were so thoughtful about the importance of faith and the importance of those Christian principles, and talked about it ad nauseum in their presidential addresses and in the Federalist documents. So there's no getting around that we had a firm Christian underpinning of our nation, and that we still have, even if it's limited, we have complete ability to share our faith, and our First Amendment rights still protects that ability.
And what are you at Concerned Women for America urging Christians to do, especially in light of Faith Month?
The reason we came up with the idea of the flag is it gives you an opportunity to lean into the moment and not just go to church on Sunday and not talk about it anymore in the workplace. What you said about literally wearing it on your sleeve, wearing the Christian flag on your lapel and flying in from your house makes it a relevant conversation beyond just, Easter weekend. And I just feel like there is a real opportunity there for us to look for the ability to share that we are people of faith. Be as proud of Jesus Christ as we should be, and not to shrink back from that in any way, but be loving about it and be encouraging about it and be joyful about it. And that is the way we should move forward in really sharing our Christianity in an everyday manner. We know we shouldn't have to whisper. We shouldn't have to hide. We need to be proud of Jesus and really be willing to proclaim the love of Christ to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that hope is really what sets us apart, especially with all of the wars going on and the troubles and concerns of the economy and culture currently. That hope we can cling to as Christians, and that joy that comes from that really does set us apart. Part of this month that I would love to highlight is the Good News campaign that involves students and younger people.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So, and if you want to come to our Instagram account, you'll see some videos. But our Young Women for America leaders, ambassadors, and chapter leaders are starting a campaign on campus where they basically just hold up a sign and it says good news. And they, everything is recorded these days, and people love to get on camera and tell you what they think. And it gives people an opportunity to share some sort of good news that they have in their lives, like people just walking by. And it'll be anything from they got into grad school, or, they had some sort of personal breakthrough, and, I don't know, they got their first job. And so we celebrate with them. And then the student turns to them and says, well, I have some good news. Could I share it with you? And they say, yes, of course. And so they share the gospel. And it is so beautiful. I literally cried when I watched it for the first time. And people receive it so well. It's celebratory. It's beautiful. It's so, it's so today. I feel like, Gen Z, everything they do is recorded and on video these days. And it's just a great opportunity for them to share their faith in a really positive way. So if you get time, come by, or come watch our Young Women for America Instagram and Concerned Women for America Instagram, and take a look. And it's a great opportunity for other students on college campuses to also to do.
All right, Madison, appreciate that conversation there. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing. We are going to take a look at Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. So as we pursue our faith in Christ, remember that people are looking towards us to point to the one who came to be the Savior of the world. So good spot to leave it on in this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, make sure you are stopping on by cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.